They say wisdom comes with age, but sometimes the hardest lesson to learn is recognizing your own worth. My name is Margaret Reynolds, Peggy to anyone who knows me, and after 43 years of putting my family first, I discovered that love without respect is just another form of sacrifice. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. When my son Andrew placed me in Sunny Pines Care Facility, while eyeing my Victorian home on Maple Street, he had no idea I'd been quietly building an empire across international waters for decades. The shock on his face when I revealed my offshore accounts was just the beginning of a journey that would transform both our lives. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who see us the least. The morning they moved me into Sunny Pines remains etched in my memory like a photograph fading at the edges. It was a Thursday in October, the trees along Riverside's main street ablaze with autumn colors I'd admired for 68 years. Andrew drove with both hands gripping the wheel, his knuckles white against his tanned skin. Victoria, my daughter-in-law, sat beside him scrolling through her phone, occasionally making a comment about the renovations they were already planning for my house. "The kitchen will need a complete overhaul," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "That vintage wallpaper has to go immediately." My house. The Victorian on Maple Street where James and I had raised our son, where we'd celebrated 40. Christmas mornings, where I'd nursed my husband through his final days of cancer 8 years ago. The home that was still mine, at least according to the deed, though Andrew had convinced me signing power of attorney was just a precaution after I'd fallen and fractured my wrist 6 months earlier. "Mom, we've been over this," Andrew said, catching my eyes in the rearview mirror. "The stairs in that old house are dangerous. You need constant supervision now. The doctors agree." One doctor agreed, Dr. Morris, Andrew's golf buddy, who'd spent exactly 12 minutes evaluating me before declaring I shouldn't live alone anymore. He'd conveniently overlooked my active volunteer schedule at the Riverside Community Center, my weekly bridge club, and the fact that I'd been balancing my own accounts and everyone else's at First Savings Bank for 37 years before retirement. "It's just until you're stronger," Andrew continued, the lie rolling easily off his tongue. "Think of it as a little vacation." Victoria didn't even bother with pretense. "We're doing you a favor, Margaret. That house is far too much maintenance for someone your age. You should be grateful we're not selling it outright." I remained silent, my hands folded over the small leather purse in my lap, the purse containing the key to a safety deposit box at Sterling Financial Services that neither of them knew existed. Inside that box sat documentation of accounts in Grand Cayman that would have made Victoria's eyes bulge had she known. Accounts I'd quietly built over decades, starting when James and I realized Andrew's spending habits in college suggested he might never learn financial responsibility. Sunny Pines Care Facility loomed ahead, a 2-story brick building with white trim that tried desperately to look homey despite the institutional green awnings and the medicinal smell that hit you 10 feet from the entrance. The affordable option, as Andrew had described it during our family meeting, where 3 certified nursing assistants managed 38 residents on the day shift and just 2 at night. "We researched all the facilities in Riverside," Victoria had explained, waving a glossy brochure. "Sunny Pines offers the best value." What she meant was, Sunny Pines was the cheapest option that wouldn't reflect poorly on them when they told friends where they'd placed me. Just expensive enough to avoid judgment, just cheap enough to preserve the bulk of their inheritance. The inheritance they were already mentally spending. The intake procedure was efficient, almost mechanical. A harried administrator named Brenda handed me forms on a clipboard, explaining each one so rapidly I caught only every third word. Andrew signed where indicated, not bothering to let me read the documents. "This grants us permission to administer medications," Brenda said, flipping to another page. "Mom takes blood pressure pills and a calcium supplement," Andrew replied, signing again. "I can answer for myself," I said quietly, but no one seemed to hear. A young aide named Tyler appeared with a wheelchair, though I was perfectly capable of walking. Facility policy for new admissions, he explained apologetically when I protested. I acquiesced, settling into the chair while Tyler gathered the 2 suitcases containing what Andrew had deemed necessary from my life's possessions. "We'll donate the rest," Victoria had said while packing my belongings, dropping my hand-knitted sweaters into a garbage bag. "So much clutter, Margaret. You'll feel lighter without it all." They hadn't asked which items held sentimental value. They hadn't wondered about the antique jewelry box that contained not only my mother's pearls, but the letters James had written me during our courtship. They hadn't inquired about the leather-bound ledgers in my home office that documented 40 years of careful financial planning. As Tyler wheeled me down a beige hallway scented with disinfectant and overcooked vegetables, Andrew and Victoria walked briskly ahead, Victoria already checking her watch. "We have that meeting with the contractor at 3, she reminded Andrew. "We should wrap this up." My room, number 118, contained a narrow bed with guardrails, a particle board dresser, a small television mounted on the wall, and a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in. The window overlooked the parking lot. The walls were the color of old oatmeal. "It's cozy," Andrew said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "The activities calendar is on the bulletin board," Tyler added kindly, gesturing to a sheet of paper listing bingo on Tuesdays, movie night on Fridays, and a monthly birthday celebration for all residents born that month. Victoria was already edging toward the door. "We brought your photo albums and some clothes. If you need anything else, just call. We'll visit this weekend." I finally found my voice. "When can I go home?" An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Andrew shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Let's see how you adjust here first," he said. "The doctor thinks this is the best place for you now." "And what about what I think?" I asked. Victoria's smile was thin. "Margaret, we all agree this is what's best. You're just upset because it's new. You'll settle in." Tyler excused himself, sensing the tension, and promised to return to help me unpack. Andrew checked his phone, then glanced at Victoria. "We really should go if we're going to meet the contractor. For renovations, they were already planning in my house, the house that was still mine." "Of course," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Don't let me keep you." Andrew bent to kiss my cheek, his aftershave too strong, too young for his 42 years. "Get some rest, Mom. We'll bring Emily to visit soon." And then they were gone, the door closing behind them with a soft click that somehow sounded like a prison gate in my ears. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling slightly, not from age or illness, but from a cold fury I hadn't felt since James's oncologist had suggested we prepare for the inevitable, when we still had 6 months of fight left in us. I waited until I heard Tyler's footsteps fade down the hallway before pulling out my cell phone, the basic flip phone Andrew had insisted was easier for me to use than my previous smartphone. I dialed a number I knew by heart. Sterling Financial Services, Natalie Wong speaking. "Natalie, it's Peggy Reynolds." Her voice immediately warmed. "Mrs. Reynolds, how are you? I wasn't expecting your call until next month's review." "There's been a change of circumstances," I said quietly. "I need to see you as soon as possible. Privately." "Of course," she said, professional enough not to ask questions over the phone. "I have an opening tomorrow at 11. Would that work?" "Yes, but I'll need transportation. I'm at Sunny Pines Care Facility on Westbrook Avenue." A brief pause. "The nursing home?" "My son felt it was best," I said, the words bitter on my tongue. "I'll explain everything tomorrow." After hanging up, I unpacked my suitcases, arranging the meager selection of clothes in the dresser. No jewelry beyond a simple watch and wedding band. No books except a large print romance novel I'd never seen before. No checkbook, no credit cards, no personal documents. Just as I finished, there was a knock at my door. An elderly woman with silver hair styled in an elegant bob leaned against the doorframe, a walker positioned in front of her. "New arrival?" she asked, her dark eyes sharp despite the frailty of her body. "I'm Sophia Martinez, room 122. "Peggy Reynolds," I replied, gesturing for her to enter. "Just got dropped off like a parcel at the post office." Sophia maneuvered her walker into my room and settled into the single visitor's chair. "Family?" "My son and his wife. They're already picking out paint colors for my house." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She nodded, unsurprised. "My daughter did the same thing 3 years ago. Sold my condo in New Haven before the moving truck had even pulled away from Sunny Pines." "How do you stand it?" I asked. Sophia's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I got myself a lawyer faster than you can say elder abuse. Took 6 months, but I got control of my finances back. Can't leave this place, though. Turns out I really do need the care. But at least the money from my condo is in my account, not hers." I studied this woman who'd clearly walked the path I was just beginning. "Do you have the lawyer's number?" She grinned. "Honey, I have it memorized. But first, tell me, what resources do you have access to? Because you're going to need something they don't know about." I thought of the safety deposit box, of the accounts in Grand Cayman, of the careful financial strategy James and I had implemented decades ago. "I have resources," I said simply. "They just don't know it yet." Sophia patted my hand, her fingers cool and paper thin against mine. "Good. You'll need allies too. The staff here isn't bad, just overworked. Tyler's a sweetheart. Brenda's fair if you're direct with her. And now you've got me." That first night at Sunny Pines was the loneliest of my life. The narrow bed with its papery sheets felt nothing like my pillow-top mattress at home. The fluorescent light in the bathroom buzzed incessantly. Unfamiliar. Sounds filtered through the thin walls. A television too loud. Someone crying out in sleep. The squeak of rubber-soled shoes as aides made their rounds. I lay awake remembering how different my life had been just a week earlier. How I'd tended my garden every morning, prepared meals in my sunny kitchen, read by the fireplace in the evening. How I'd built a life of dignity and independence despite the loss of James. How quickly Andrew and Victoria had dismantled it all. At 3 a.m, unable to sleep, I pulled out the one personal treasure I'd managed to hide in my luggage. A small photo album containing pictures of James and me in our early years. Our wedding day. The day we brought Andrew home from the hospital. Family vacations when Andrew was small and still looked at me with unconditional love. There was also a photograph taken on our 20th anniversary, during our trip to Grand Cayman, the trip where we'd opened the first offshore account. James, practical and forward-thinking, had suggested it after watching his brother's children squander their inheritance. "We'll provide for Andrew," he'd said as we sat on the beach, planning our financial future. "But we'll also protect ourselves, just in case." "He's only 12, I'd protested. "He'll mature." James had squeezed my hand. "Of course he will. And these accounts will still be there for him when he does. But if he doesn't, if he turns out to be someone who values money over family, we'll have options." At the time, I'd thought James was being overly cautious. Now, staring at his smiling face in the photograph, I whispered, "You were right, my love." Morning came with the institutional routine of a place designed to process human needs as efficiently as possible. Breakfast at 7:30, lukewarm oatmeal and weak coffee. Medications at 8:15, distributed by a harried nurse who barely looked up from her cart. A group exercise session at 9 SAO that consisted mostly of seated arm movements to outdated music. By 10:30, I'd changed into the one decent outfit Andrew had packed for me, navy slacks and a cream-colored blouse, and was waiting near the entrance for my transportation to Sterling Financial Services. Sophia had coached me on how to sign myself out for a medical appointment, which is what I'd listed in the logbook. They can't legally keep you here, she'd explained over breakfast. You're not under court-ordered guardianship. Not yet, anyway. The taxi arrived promptly at 10:45. I signed out under the bored gaze of the receptionist and walked out the front door with my head held high, feeling a rush of exhilaration at this small act of independence. Sterling Financial Services occupied the 15th floor of Riverside's only high-rise building. I'd chosen the firm 20 years earlier for its discretion, its expertise in international banking, and its location. Far enough from First Savings. Bank that I wouldn't run into colleagues who might mention my visits to Andrew. Natalie Wong greeted me at reception, her professional demeanor unable to completely mask her surprise at my appearance. Had I aged so noticeably in the month since our last meeting? Or was it the institutional haircut the Sunny Pines stylist had insisted was easier to manage that made me look suddenly older? "Mrs. Reynolds," she said warmly, leading me to her private office. "It's good to see you. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be lovely," I replied, settling into the comfortable chair across from her desk. "And please, it's Peggy. I think we've known each other long enough for that." Once we were settled with our drinks, Natalie opened a leather portfolio and looked at me expectantly. "You mentioned a change in circumstances." "My son has placed me in a nursing home and is proceeding to take over my house," I said without preamble. "I need to regain control of my affairs before he discovers the offshore accounts." To Natalie's credit, her expression remained professionally neutral despite the bombshell I'd just dropped. "I see. Has he established legal guardianship?" "No. I signed a power of attorney for healthcare decisions after a minor fall. He's expanded its interpretation." She made a note. "And the house?" "Still in my name, but he's already meeting with contractors for renovations. I suspect he'll try to have me declared incompetent soon." Natalie's pen paused. "Are you concerned about financial exploitation?" "I'm certain of it," I replied. "Andrew and Victoria have been living beyond their means for years. My house, mortgage-free and in a desirable neighborhood, would solve many of their problems." "What would you like to do?" I leaned forward. "First, I need to secure the offshore accounts. Transfer signing authority solely to me, removing the contingencies that would allow Andrew access under certain conditions." James and I had structured the accounts carefully. Andrew could access them only if both James and I were deceased, or if I was medically unable to manage my own affairs, a determination that required evaluation by 2 independent physicians, not just James's golf buddy. "That can be arranged," Natalie said, making notes. "What else?" "I need to establish a new power of attorney, healthcare and financial, naming someone other than Andrew, someone I trust." "Do you have someone in mind?" I thought of my oldest friend, Charlotte, who lived in Boston, too far away for practical matters. "My niece, Rebecca?" "Possibly, but she had young children and a demanding career." "I'll need some time to consider that," I admitted. "In the meantime, I need access to funds that Andrew doesn't control. Cash, preferably." Natalie nodded. "I can arrange a withdrawal from your international accounts. It will take a few days to process. And I'll need a new cell phone, one with internet access that Andrew doesn't know about." "I can have my assistant pick one up today," she offered. "We could set it up before you leave." For the next hour, we outlined a strategy to protect my assets and regain my independence. By the time I left Sterling Financial Services, I had a new smartphone hidden in my purse, appointments with 2 independent physicians scheduled for the following week, and the promise of $10,000 in cash to be delivered to me discreetly at Sunny Pines. "This feels like something from a spy movie," I remarked as Natalie walked me to the elevator. She smiled slightly. "Financial security often requires discretion, especially in family matters. You'd be surprised how common your situation is." Common, perhaps, but still heartbreaking. Her expression softened. Yes, it is, but you're handling it with remarkable composure. The taxi took me back to Sunny Pines, where I signed in as if returning from a routine medical appointment. No one questioned my absence. No one seemed particularly aware I'd been gone at all. That evening, as I picked at a dinner of dry chicken and overcooked vegetables, Sophia joined me in the dining room, her tray balanced precariously on her walker. "How did it go?" she asked once we were seated. "Phase 1 is in motion," I replied. Quietly. "I have resources they don't know about." "Offshore accounts, if I had to guess," Sophia said with a knowing smile. "My late husband was a tax attorney. He always told me the truly wealthy kept their money where family couldn't touch it." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you truly wealthy, Sophia?" "Not anymore," she said with a sigh. "My Eduardo always managed our finances. When he passed, I was unprepared. By the time I realized what my daughter was doing with my accounts, half my savings was gone." "I'm sorry." She shrugged. "Water under the bridge. But it's why I'm stuck here instead of in that luxury facility on the river, the one with private rooms and actual chefs. I thought of the money accumulating in Grand Cayman, protected from inflation and family greed by James's foresight. Enough to buy a small condo outright. Enough for in-home care if I needed it. Enough for the luxury facility on the river if it came to that." "Maybe things will change," I said. "For you, perhaps," Sophia replied. "You still have fight left in you, and resources from the sound of it." "For both of us," I clarified. "Friends look out for each other." Her dark eyes widened slightly, then crinkled with a smile. "I think I'm going to enjoy having you as a neighbor, Peggy Reynolds." True to his word, Andrew visited that weekend, bringing Victoria and my 16-year-old granddaughter, Emily. They arrived Sunday afternoon during the monthly birthday celebration, in the common room, where a sheet cake with grocery store frosting was being distributed to residents in paper plates. "Oh, Mom, you're socializing already," Andrew said with forced cheerfulness, as he spotted me sitting with Sophia and another resident named Harold. "That's great." Emily hung back, clearly uncomfortable with the nursing home environment, her eyes locked on her phone screen. Victoria surveyed the room with poorly disguised distaste. "How quaint," she murmured, declining a piece of cake when offered. "We brought some of your personal items," Andrew said, placing a small box on the table. "Photo frames, your bird book, a few other things we thought you might want." Things they had decided weren't valuable enough to keep or sell, more likely. I peered into the box, my grandmother's silver frame holding a picture of James, a well-worn field guide to New England birds, a ceramic dish I'd made in a pottery class 20 years ago. "Thank you," I said quietly. "How are the renovations coming?" Andrew and Victoria exchanged a quick glance. "Just some minor updates for now," Andrew said carefully. "The contractor thinks the kitchen could use modernizing. And those awful floral curtains in the living room have to go," Victoria added. "We're thinking a more contemporary aesthetic." "We?" I repeated. "So you're moving in?" Another exchanged glance. "It makes sense financially," Andrew said. "Our mortgage is astronomical, and Lakeview Estates has become so overpriced. With what we'd get selling our house, plus the savings on the mortgage. Plus, Emily would have a better school district," Victoria interjected. "The Victorian has good bones. It just needs updating to reach its potential." "I see," I said, my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. "And did either of you consider asking me how I felt about these plans?" Andrew's expression shifted to the patient, slightly condescending look I'd grown to detest. "Mom, we're doing what's best for everyone. You're comfortable here with people to look after you. The house was becoming too much for you to manage. This way, it stays in the family." "And who's paying for Sunny Pines?" I asked. "My Social Security and pension don't cover this." "We've worked it out with your bank," Andrew said vaguely. The financial advisor at First Savings helped us set up the payments from your accounts. Not my accounts at Sterling Financial. Not the offshore accounts they knew nothing about. Just the modest checking and savings accounts at First Savings where my pension and Social Security were deposited. How generous of you, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Using my money to pay for a place I never wanted to be, while you renovate my house for yourselves. Victoria's smile tightened. Margaret, you're being dramatic. This arrangement benefits everyone. Emily finally looked up from her phone, her gaze darting between her parents and me. I thought Grandma was just staying here until she felt better. Of course she is, Victoria said quickly. We're just making some improvements to the house in the meantime. I feel fine now, I said, holding Emily's gaze. I felt fine all along. Andrew placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. Mom had a fall, remember? The doctor said she needs supervision. One doctor, your golf buddy, I corrected. I'm seeing 2 other physicians this week for additional opinions. That caught Andrew's attention. What? How? Who authorized those appointments? I did, I replied calmly. I'm still legally competent to make my own medical decisions, despite what Dr. Morris might have implied. Victoria's expression hardened. Andrew, your mother is clearly confused. We should probably cut this visit short and let her rest. I'm not confused, Victoria. I'm angry. There's a difference. Andrew stood, signaling the end of the conversation. We'll talk about this later, Mom, when you're feeling more yourself. I've never felt more myself, I said as they prepared to leave. Emily, would you like to stay a bit longer? We hardly got to talk. My granddaughter glanced at her parents, then back to me. Can I, Dad? Just for a little while? Andrew hesitated, clearly torn between ending the uncomfortable confrontation and appearing reasonable in front of his daughter. 30 minutes, he finally conceded. We'll wait in the car. It's not pleasant in here. After they left, Emily slid into the chair across from me, finally putting her phone away. Grandma? What's really going on? Dad said you couldn't live alone anymore because of your health. I looked at my granddaughter, bright, perceptive, and caught in the middle of adult conflicts she shouldn't have to navigate. How much should I reveal? Your father is concerned about me living alone, I said carefully. But I don't believe Sunny Pines is the right solution. I'm looking into alternatives. Emily frowned. But if you're sick... I'm not sick, honey. I'm 68. I had a fall and fractured my wrist, which has healed. I don't need to be in a nursing home. Then why did Dad... I chose my next words carefully. Your father and mother have financial pressures I don't think you're aware of. My house would solve many of their problems. Emily's eyes widened slightly. You think they put you here to take your house? I think they convinced themselves it was for my own good, but yes, the house is a major factor. She was quiet for a moment, processing this. That's why they've been talking about selling our place. Mom's been looking at private schools for... Me too, saying we could afford it once we consolidated resources. Smart girl. She'd put it together faster than I expected. Emily, I don't want to put you in the middle of this. I just want you to understand that I'm not suffering from dementia or illness. I'm perfectly capable of living independently. She nodded slowly. I believe you. You seem exactly the same as always. She hesitated. What are you going to do? I'm going to fight for my independence, I said simply. And I'd appreciate if you'd visit me sometimes, regardless of what happens between me and your parents. Of course I will, she said, reaching for my hand. I miss our Saturday baking sessions. I miss them too. For the next 20 minutes, we talked about her school, her friends, her dreams of studying marine biology in college, regular grandmother-granddaughter, conversation that felt gloriously normal amidst the sterile strangeness of Sunny Pines. When Andrew texted that their 30 minutes were up, Emily hugged me tightly. I'll tell Dad I want to visit again soon, she whispered. and I'll keep an eye on what they're doing at the house. After she left, I sat alone in the common room, the remnants of the birthday celebration being cleaned up around me. The brief visit had clarified my resolve. This wasn't just about my house or my money anymore. It was about truth and consequences, about teaching my son that respect wasn't optional in our relationship. Sophia appeared beside me, her walker, making a soft squeak on the linoleum floor. "Family drama?" she asked, having observed the interaction from across the room. "The opening salvo," I replied. "Phase 2 begins tomorrow." Her eyes twinkled with interest. "Need a co-conspirator?" I smiled for what felt like the first time in days. "I thought you'd never ask." The next morning marked the beginning of my counteroffensive. Natalie had arranged for the 2 independent medical evaluations to take place at Sunny Pines. Neurologist on Tuesday and a geriatric specialist on Thursday. She'd also expedited the paperwork to remove Andrew's contingency access to the offshore accounts, a process that would take just under a week to complete. "This is a beautiful conspiracy," Sophia remarked as she helped me prepare for the first evaluation. She'd loaned me her good cardigan, cashmere, slightly worn at the elbows but infinitely better than anything in my current wardrobe, and was now watching me apply makeup using a compact mirror. "Not a conspiracy," I corrected her. "Self-preservation," Sophia snorted. "Call it what you want, but I haven't been this entertained since Eduardo and I went on that Caribbean cruise in '05. Dr. Leanne Chen, the neurologist, arrived precisely at 10. Unlike Dr. Morris with his cursory examination, she spent nearly 2 hours with me, conducting a thorough cognitive assessment, reviewing my medical history, and discussing my daily activities before and after coming to Sunny Pines. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said as we concluded, "based on my evaluation, I see no cognitive impairment that would prevent you from making your own decisions or living independently with minimal support." "Could you put that in writing?" I asked. Her eyes, sharp behind stylish glasses, met mine with understanding. "Already doing so. I'm familiar with cases where family members overreach in their concern." She chose her words carefully. "My report will be very clear about your capacity." 2 days later, Dr. William Abernathy, the geriatric specialist, reached similar conclusions. "Your wrist has healed nicely," he noted, examining the site of my fracture. "And your overall health is excellent for someone your age, with some minor home modifications, a rail in the shower, perhaps better lighting on the stairs. I see no medical reason you couldn't return to independent living." By Friday, I had 2 professional medical opinions contradicting Dr. Morris's assessment. Natalie had also arranged for a discreet courier to deliver an envelope containing $10,000 in cash and a prepaid debit card linked to one of my offshore accounts. The new smartphone was working perfectly, hidden in the hollowed-out bird guidebook. Andrew had so thoughtlessly returned to me. Everything was in place for the next phase of my plan. I just needed to wait for Andrew's weekly Sunday visit. He arrived alone this time, explaining that Victoria had a charity committee meeting and Emily was at a friend's house working on a science project. "You look different, Mom," he said, studying me as we sat in the small private lounge Sunny Pines reserved for family visits. "Have you done something with your hair?" "Just taking care of myself," I replied, conscious of the subtle makeup Sophia had helped me apply and the dignified outfit I'd asked Claire, the social worker, to purchase. For me using some of my emergency cash. Andrew seemed unsettled by my improved appearance, perhaps expecting to find me more institutionalized after 2 weeks at Sunny Pines. "Well, you look well. That's good." "I am well, which brings me to the reason I wanted to meet with you today." I retrieved a folder from my bag and placed it on the table between us. "I've had 2 independent medical evaluations. Both physicians have cleared me for independent living." His expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "What? Who authorized those?" "I did." I'm still legally competent to seek medical opinions. Mom, Dr. Morris was clear. Dr. Morris spent 12 minutes with me and is your golf partner, I interrupted. Dr. Chen and Dr. Abernathy each spent over an hour conducting thorough evaluations. Their reports are in this folder. Andrew didn't touch the folder. This is unnecessary, Mom. We're taking good care of you. The house is being well maintained. By maintained, do you mean gutted and renovated to Victoria's specifications? A flush crept up his neck. We're making some updates. Andrew, I want to be clear, I said, leaning forward slightly. I do not consent to living at Sunny Pines. I do not consent to the renovations you're making to my home, and I am taking steps to regain control of my affairs. His face hardened. You had a serious fall. You're not thinking clearly. I fractured my wrist, not my brain, and I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. What does that mean? He demanded. It means I've consulted with a lawyer. This wasn't strictly true yet, but would be by tomorrow, thanks to Sophia's contact. It means I'm aware you've overstepped the limited power of attorney I granted you. Andrew's confident demeanor faltered slightly. Everything I've done has been for your own good. You're being influenced by someone here. That woman I've seen you with, the one with the walker. Sophia is my friend, not my influencer, and my decisions are my own. He stood, agitation evident in his movements. I'm going to speak with the administrator. Clearly, you need more supervision, not less. Before you do that, I said calmly, you should know I've also been in contact with my financial advisor. That stopped him. Which financial advisor? Not the one at First Savings who helped you work out payments for Sunny Pines. My actual financial advisor. Andrew slowly sat back down, wariness creeping into his expression. I don't understand. There are accounts you don't know about. Andrew, accounts your father and I established many years ago. What accounts? What are you talking about? I smiled slightly. Offshore accounts. In Grand Cayman. His face went blank with shock. That's not possible. I've managed your finances since Dad died. There's just the checking and savings at First Savings, and your pension fund. Those are the accounts you know about. Your father was more prescient than you give him credit for. He believed in preparing for all contingencies. Andrew's expression cycled through disbelief, confusion, and the dawning realization that he might have seriously miscalculated. How much? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Enough, I replied. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life without your assistance. Enough to hire full-time home care if needed. Enough to take legal action if you continue on your current path. You're bluffing, he said, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. I pulled out my new smartphone, not the basic flip phone he'd provided, and opened the banking app Natalie had configured. I turned the screen toward him, showing the balance of just one of the offshore accounts, $427,689.42. Andrew stared at the screen, his face draining of color. This isn't... Where did this come from? Careful financial planning. Your father... And I saw how you managed money in college. The credit card debt, the impulsive purchases, the expectation that we would always cover your shortfalls. We hoped you'd mature, but we also prepared for the possibility you wouldn't. His expression darkened. So you hid money from me? Your own son? We protected ourselves while still providing for you, I corrected. Your education was fully paid for. We helped with the down payment on your first house. We've been generous, Andrew, but we weren't obligated to make you the sole beneficiary of everything we worked for. He stood again, anger replacing shock. Does Victoria know about this? We've been killing ourselves trying to make ends meet, thinking we needed to be careful. With your limited resources. Victoria's shopping habits and your country club membership suggest you haven't been killing yourselves too severely, I observed. And no, Victoria doesn't know. Only my financial advisor, your father, and now you. What do you want? He demanded. I want to go home, I said simply. I want the renovations to stop. I want control of my life back. And if I refuse? Then I'll instruct my lawyer to challenge the power of attorney you've been misusing. I'll use these medical evaluations to demonstrate I'm fully competent, and I'll make different arrangements for my estate planning. The threat hung between us. Andrew had always assumed he and Emily would inherit everything I had. The possibility that he might be written out of my will was clearly something he'd never considered. You wouldn't do that, he said, but doubt had crept into his voice. I don't want to, I acknowledged. You're my son, and I love you. But love without respect isn't healthy for either of us. Andrew paced the small room, running his hands through, his hair in the same gesture he'd had since childhood when confronted with a problem he couldn't immediately solve. I need time to think, he finally said. This is a lot to process. Take all the time you need. I've already scheduled a meeting with my lawyer for tomorrow to discuss next steps. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time in years, not as an aging parent to be managed, but as Peggy Reynolds, the woman who had balanced the books for First Savings Bank for nearly 4 decades, who had raised him while working full-time after James's cancer diagnosis, who had built a life of quiet, competence that he had somehow failed to notice or respect. I'll talk to Victoria, he said finally. We'll figure something out. After he left, I sat in the lounge for a long time, processing the confrontation. The revelation of the offshore accounts had shocked Andrew, as I knew it would, but I hadn't anticipated the hurt beneath his anger, the sense of betrayal that we had kept financial secrets from him. Had James and I been wrong to establish those accounts without telling Andrew? At the time, it had seemed like prudent financial planning, insurance against contingencies we hoped would never arise. Now, I wondered if our lack of transparency had contributed to the distance between us, to Andrew's assumption that he needed to take control for my own good. These reflections were interrupted by Sophia, who wheeled herself into the lounge with surprising speed for someone generally dependent on a walker. Well, she demanded eagerly, how did Prince Charming take the news about your hidden treasure? I couldn't help but smile at her characterization. About as well as you'd expect. Shock, disbelief, anger. He's taking time to think. Which means he's running home to consult with Ice Queen Victoria about how to salvage their renovation plans. Most likely, I agreed. Sophia settled her walker and eased into a chair. What's your next move, Peggy? Because he'll be back with a counter-strategy. My next move is meeting with the lawyer tomorrow, getting my power of attorney revoked and establishing a new one. Good. And after that? I hesitated. I haven't thought that far ahead yet. Sophia fixed me with a penetrating look. Yes, you have. You're just not sure you want to say it out loud. She was right. There was another step I'd been considering, one that felt both liberating and terrifying. I'm thinking about selling the house, I admitted. Not to Andrew, but on the open market. Sophia nodded slowly. Big step. That's been your home for, what? 40 years? 42. James and I bought it right after we married. Lots of memories. Yes, but lately it's felt more like a museum than a home. Preserving the past instead of embracing whatever time I have left. Sophia's expression softened with understanding. When Eduardo died, everyone told me to stay in our house, that familiar surroundings would comfort me. But all I saw were the empty spaces where he should have been, the chair where he read the newspaper, the side of the bed that stayed perfectly made. Exactly, I said, relieved that someone understood. After James died, I kept everything the same, as if changing. Anything would somehow erase him further. So what would you do instead, if you sold the house? I smiled, surprised by how clear the answer suddenly was. Travel. See the places James and I always talked about but put off until someday. Maybe buy a small condo as a home base. Something manageable with no stairs. Sounds like you've been thinking about this longer than you realize, Sophia observed. Perhaps I had. Perhaps the seeds had been planted long before Andrew moved me to Sunny Pines, in the quiet evenings, when I rattled around that big Victorian alone, dusting rooms no one used, and maintaining a garden that had once brought James such joy, but had become merely another chore on my endless list. Life's too short to live it for other people, Sophia said, patting my hand, even when those people are your children. The next day, Sophia accompanied me to meet with Gerald Hoffman, the lawyer she had recommended. We took a taxi to his modest office in downtown Riverside, where he greeted us with the brisk efficiency of someone who had specialized in elder law for over 30 years. Mrs. Martinez has explained the general situation, he said after we were seated. But I'd like to hear the details from you, Mrs. Reynolds. I outlined everything. The fall, the power of attorney, Andrew moving me to Sunny Pines, the renovations to my house, and my recent medical evaluations contradicting Dr. Morris's assessment. Gerald took meticulous notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he sat back, tapping his pen against his yellow legal pad. This is unfortunately common, he said. Though the offshore accounts add an interesting wrinkle. Most of my clients don't have that level of financial independence to leverage. Can you help me revoke the power of attorney? I asked. Absolutely. With these medical evaluations demonstrating your competence, we can file paperwork today. I'll also prepare a cease and desist letter regarding the unauthorized renovations to your property. How long will this take? The power of attorney revocation can be expedited, probably 2 to 3 business days. The cease and desist is effective immediately upon receipt. I nodded, relief washing over me. And what about getting me out of Sunny Pines? Gerald frowned slightly. That's potentially more complicated. Your son could contest your release, especially if he's been representing himself as your guardian to the facility. He's not my legal guardian, I said firmly. No, but nursing. Homes tend to be cautious. They might request a court evaluation if there's a dispute about your capacity. Sophia, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, leaned forward. What if she simply checks herself out? She's not under court-ordered guardianship. They can't legally hold her. Gerald considered this. Technically correct. You signed yourself. In, Mrs. Reynolds? My son signed the paperwork, I admitted. But without legal guardianship established, they would have needed your consent, Gerald pointed out. Did you provide verbal consent? I thought back to that first day, to the clipboard. Brenda had thrust in front of Andrew, to my quiet protests that had gone unheeded. I explicitly stated I didn't want to be there, but no one seemed to be listening. Gerald made another note. Then we have grounds to argue you were essentially admitted against your will. That's a serious matter for any care facility. I don't want to cause trouble for Sunny Pines, I said quickly. Most of the staff are doing their best in a difficult situation. Understood. But sometimes the threat of legal action is the most efficient way to overcome administrative resistance. He closed his notebook. Here's what I propose. I'll file the power of attorney revocation today. I'll also prepare the cease and desist regarding your property. Then I'll accompany you back to Sunny Pines and facilitate your departure. Hopefully without need for threats, but prepared if necessary. When can we do this? I asked. The paperwork will take a few hours. How about I meet you at Sunny Pines around 4 this afternoon? That should give me time to file everything and make copies. 4 o'clock. Just 6 hours until I could potentially walk out of Sunny Pines for good. The prospect was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. What about my house? I asked. If Andrew has already started renovations, one step at a time, Gerald advised. Let's establish your legal independence first, then we can address the property issues. After finalizing the arrangements with Gerald, Sophia and I took a taxi back to Sunny Pines. Neither of us spoke much during the ride, each lost in our own thoughts. You could come with me, I said suddenly as we neared the facility. When I leave, we could find a place together, split the costs of any care we might need. Sophia looked startled, then thoughtful. Two old broads taking on the world? Why not? We've both managed on our own for years. Together, we'd be formidable. She chuckled softly. That we would. Let me think about it, Peggy. It's tempting, but I've gotten used to certain aspects of Sunny Pines. My arthritis makes independent living challenging on bad days. We could hire help, I suggested. Between my offshore accounts and whatever you recovered from your daughter, we could afford proper assistance. True. She patted my hand. Let's see how today goes first. One liberation at a time. Back at Sunny Pines, I began discreetly packing my few valuable possessions: the photo album, the smartphone hidden in the bird book, the documents from Sterling Financial. Everything else could be replaced. At 3:30, my phone rang. Was Andrew. Mom, we need to talk, he said without preamble. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. I'm listening, I replied cautiously. Victoria and I discussed it, and we recognize we may have been hasty in moving you to Sunny Pines. Hasty is an interesting word for it. He sighed. Mom, please, I'm trying here. We're willing to pause the renovations and discuss alternatives. What kind of alternatives? Maybe an in-law suite in the house. We'd still move in, but you'd have your own space, your own entrance, or a smaller place nearby that we could help maintain. Neither option returned my full independence or acknowledged the fundamental violation of trust that had occurred. I appreciate you're willing to discuss options, I said carefully. But I've made other arrangements. What arrangements? His voice sharpened. I'm leaving Sunny Pines today. My lawyer is meeting me at 4 to facilitate the process. Lawyer, Mom, stop. You're overreacting. We can work this out as a family. We tried that approach. You moved me to a nursing home and started renovating my house without my consent. Because I was worried about you, he exclaimed, frustration evident in his voice. The fall, your age, living alone in that big house. Can't you see I was concerned? Concern would have been discussing options with me, not making unilateral decisions about my life. A long silence followed. When Andrew spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost subdued. What about Emily? She loves that house. All her memories of Grandpa are there. The mention of my granddaughter tugged at my heart. Emily was the innocent party in all of this, caught between adult conflicts and manipulations. Emily will always be welcome in my life, wherever I live, I said firmly. But I need to make decisions based on what's best for me now, not what's most convenient for you and Victoria. Can we at least talk in person before you do anything drastic? He pleaded. I'll come right now. I checked the time. 3:45. Gerald would arrive in 15 minutes. You can meet me at Sunny Pines at 4, I conceded. My lawyer will be here too. Lawyer, he repeated, as if the word tasted bitter. Fine, I'll be there. After hanging up, I finished my preparations and waited in the small lounge where we'd had our confrontation the day before. Sophia had offered to join me, but I'd declined. This needed to be between Andrew, my lawyer, and me. Gerald arrived, precisely at 4, briefcase in hand, projecting the calm authority of someone accustomed to navigating difficult family situations. I had just introduced myself when Andrew burst through the door, slightly breathless as if he'd rushed from the parking lot. Mom, he said, glancing warily at Gerald. I came as quickly as I could. Andrew, this is Gerald Hoffman, my attorney. I made the introduction with as much composure as I could manage. Mr. Hoffman, my son, Andrew Reynolds. The men exchanged terse nods but didn't shake hands. Mrs. Reynolds has asked me to help her address several legal matters, Gerald began, opening his briefcase. First, The revocation of the power of attorney you've been exercising, which has been filed with the appropriate authorities. Second, this cease and desist regarding unauthorized renovations to her property. He extended a document toward Andrew, who didn't take it. This isn't necessary, Andrew said, his gaze fixed on me rather than Gerald. Mom, I told you we're willing to work something out. After I revealed the offshore accounts, I pointed out. Not before. Andrew flushed. That's not fair. I was concerned about your welfare long before I knew about any hidden money. Yet your solution conveniently solved your housing situation while giving you control of my assets. Gerald cleared his throat. If I may interject, Mrs. Reynolds, has obtained independent medical evaluations confirming her cognitive capacity and physical ability to live independently with minimal support. She has decided to leave Sunny Pines effective immediately. Andrew's expression hardened. This is crazy. Where will you go? Back to the house that you just told me you might sell. How will you manage? I've made arrangements, I said, though, in truth, I'd only gotten as far as booking a hotel room for a few nights while I sorted out longer-term plans. What arrangements? With whom? Andrew demanded. Gerald stepped in smoothly. Mrs. Reynolds is not obligated to share her personal plans with you, especially given recent events. Now, we should proceed with the checkout process. I've already spoken with the administrator, who has agreed to facilitate Mrs. Reynolds' departure without undue complications. Andrew looked from Gerald to me, realization dawning that he was losing control of the situation. Mom, please, he said, his voice softer now. I know I made mistakes. I should have talked to you more, listened better. But I really was trying to do what I thought was best for you. For a moment, I wavered. Despite everything, he was my son. The little boy I'd nursed through childhood illnesses, the teenager I'd taught to drive, the young man I'd watched graduate from college with such pride. Was I being too harsh? Too unforgiving? Then I remembered how easily he had dismissed my protests when moving me to Sunny Pines. How he and Victoria had discussed renovating my home as if my opinions were irrelevant. How quickly their attitude had changed when they learned about the offshore accounts. I believe you think that's true, I said finally. But we need time apart to reset our relationship. I need to establish my independence, and you need to recognize that loving someone doesn't mean controlling them. Andrew's shoulders slumped slightly. So, that's it? You're just walking away? I'm walking toward something, Andrew. A life where I make my own choices for whatever time I have left. Gerald, sensing the conversation had reached its natural conclusion, gently suggested we proceed with the checkout process. Andrew followed us to the administrative office, watching silently as Brenda processed my departure paperwork with a carefully neutral expression. You'll need to fill out these release forms, she explained, sliding documents across her desk. And there's a final billing statement for the days you've stayed. I signed where indicated, noting that Andrew was watching the process with a mixture of disbelief and resignation. When everything was complete, Brenda handed me a copy of the paperwork. Your belongings? She asked. Packed and ready, I replied. Just one suitcase. Andrew finally spoke. Let me at least help you with that, and drive you, wherever you're going. I hesitated, then nodded. Setting boundaries didn't mean severing all connection, and perhaps allowing him this small act of assistance could be the first step toward a healthier relationship. Thank you, I said. That would be helpful. As we walked back to my room to collect my suitcase, Andrew cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I am sorry, Mom. I got so caught up in what Victoria and I wanted that I lost sight of what you needed. It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of everything that had gone wrong, but it was a start. I know, I said quietly. And I'm sorry, too, for not being more direct about my concerns earlier. For letting resentment build instead of addressing issues as they arose. We collected my suitcase and said goodbye to Sophia, who watched the proceedings with sharp interest. "I'll call you," I promised her, "about that proposition we discussed." She winked. "I'll be waiting. Good luck, Peggy." Gerald accompanied us to the parking lot, where he handed me his card. "Call me tomorrow to discuss next steps regarding your property, and any time if you encounter any resistance." He glanced meaningfully at Andrew. After he departed, Andrew and I stood awkwardly beside his car. "Where am I taking you?" he finally asked. I gave him the address of the Riverside Hotel, a modest but comfortable establishment in the center of town. As he loaded my suitcase into the trunk, he asked, "How long are you planning to stay there?" "Just until I decide what's next," I replied. "I have options to consider." The drive to the hotel was mostly silent, both of us processing the dramatic shift in our relationship. When we arrived, Andrew insisted on carrying my bag into the lobby and waiting while I checked in. "Mom," he said as we stood by the elevator, "I know you need space, and I respect that. But please don't cut me and Emily out completely. Whatever issues exist between us, she adores you." "I would never cut Emily out," I assured him. "And I'm not cutting you out either, Andrew. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference." He nodded slowly. "Can I call you tomorrow, just to make sure you're settled?" "Yes," I said. "That would be fine." As I rode the elevator to my room, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for the trust that had been broken, determination to forge a new path, and underneath it all, a surprising sense of liberation. The hotel room was simple but clean, with a comfortable bed and a small sitting area overlooking Riverside's main street. I unpacked my few belongings, then sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the day's events. I had left sunny Pines. I had confronted Andrew with legal backup. I had taken the first steps toward reclaiming my independence. But where exactly did I go from here? The offshore accounts gave me financial freedom, but money alone couldn't create purpose or connection. The Victorian house held memories, but was returning there the right choice? And what about Sophia, still at Sunny Pines but potentially willing to join me in a new venture? As evening settled over Riverside, I opened the bird guidebook and removed my smartphone. I had calls to make, research to do, decisions to contemplate. But first, I sent a text to Emily. "I've left Sunny Pines, staying at the Riverside Hotel for now. Would love to see you this weekend if you can manage it. Love, Grandma." Her reply came almost immediately. "So glad you're out of that place. I'll definitely come see you. Love you tons." That simple message, filled with genuine affection rather than obligation or convenience, gave me hope that whatever path I chose moving forward, I wouldn't be walking it entirely alone. Morning light filtered through the hotel curtains, waking me from the deepest sleep I'd had in weeks. For a moment, I was disoriented. The unfamiliar room, the distant sounds of traffic, the absence of nursing home routines. Then I remembered I was free. Not entirely settled, but free to make my own choices again. I ordered room service breakfast, a luxury after Sunny Pines' institutional fare, and made a list of priorities for the day. First, call Gerald to discuss next steps regarding the house. Second, contact Natalie about accessing more funds from the offshore accounts. Third, begin researching housing alternatives. Gerald answered on the second ring, sounding pleased to hear from me. "Mrs. Reynolds, I trust you had a comfortable night." "Better than any at Sunny Pines," I assured him. "What's our next step with the house?" "I've had the cease and desist delivered to both your home address and your son's residence. Legally, they must stop all renovation work immediately. However, we should inspect the property to document its current condition. Can we do that today?" "I can arrange it for this afternoon if that works for you. Say 2 o'clock. I'll bring a photographer to document everything." After confirming the appointment, I called Natalie, who was equally efficient in arranging for additional funds to be transferred to my new local account. By noon, I had a financial cushion substantial enough to secure housing, replace necessities, and begin rebuilding my life. I was reviewing rental listings online when Emily called. "Grandma, Dad told us you left Sunny Pines. Are you really at a hotel?" "I am, sweetheart, just temporarily, until I decide what's next." "Can I come see you? Like, now?" "I told Mom I needed to do research at the library, but I could come to you instead." The subterfuge concerned me slightly, but I understood her eagerness. "Of course. I'm at the Riverside Hotel, room 314. Emily arrived 30 minutes later, practically vibrating, with excitement and questions. At 16, she had James's height and my stubborn chin, a combination that made her both striking and formidable. She hugged me fiercely, then pulled back to examine me as if confirming I was really okay. "You look so much better already," she declared, dropping onto the edge of the bed. Sunny Pines was terrible. Every time we visited, it smelled like sad cabbage. I laughed, grateful for her honesty. That's as good a description as any. "So what happened? Dad just said you decided to leave and got a lawyer involved." I hesitated, not wanting to disparage Andrew, but also unwilling to sugarcoat the situation. "Your father and I have different views about what's best for me at this stage of my life. I needed to take legal steps to ensure my wishes were respected." Emily's perceptive eyes narrowed. "He's still doing renovations on your house. I was there yesterday, and the contractors were ripping out the kitchen cabinets. Mom was talking about paint colors for the master bedroom. That should be stopping today. My lawyer sent official notice." She grinned. "Good. I heard Mom on the phone saying things were getting complicated. Now I know what she meant." Emily leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Dad mentioned something about offshore accounts? Is that true?" I smiled at her. Directness. "Yes. Your grandfather and I established some financial safeguards years ago that your father wasn't aware of." "That's so boss," she exclaimed. "Like a secret identity or something." "Hardly that dramatic. Just prudent planning." Emily's expression turned serious. "Are you and Dad going to be okay? He seems really upset." "We will be eventually," I said, hoping it was true. "Sometimes relationships need to be reset when old patterns aren't working anymore. Your father needs to see me as a capable adult, not just as his mother who needs managing." She nodded thoughtfully. "Like how they still treat me like I'm 12, even though I'm practically handling college applications on my own." "Somewhat similar, yes. So what happens next? Are you going back to the house?" "I'm going to inspect it this afternoon to see what's been done. After that, I'm not sure." I hesitated, then decided Emily deserved my honesty. "I'm considering selling it." Her eyes widened. "Really? But you've lived there forever." "That's part of why I'm considering it. Maybe it's time for something new, something that's just mine rather than a museum to the past." Emily absorbed this, her expression shifting from surprise to contemplation. "I get that, I think. Like how I want to go to college somewhere nobody knows me as Andrew and Victoria's daughter. Sometimes you need a fresh start." Her understanding touched me deeply. Exactly like that. We chatted for another hour, with Emily filling me in. On school projects, her marine biology ambitions, and the latest dramas among her friends. The conversation flowed easily, free from the strain that had characterized my recent interactions with Andrew and Victoria. When it was time for her to leave, she hugged me again. "Next time I visit, I'll actually tell Mom and Dad where I'm going. I just wasn't sure," she trailed off. "If they'd approve?" I finished for her. She nodded. "Things are tense at home, lots of whispered arguments after they think I've gone to bed." "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle, sweetheart." Emily shrugged. "It's okay. I'm just glad you're standing up for yourself. It's inspiring." After she left, I prepared for the house inspection, choosing my most businesslike outfit from the limited wardrobe I'd brought from Sunny Pines. The clothes didn't quite fit my new self-image, the woman who had offshore accounts and was reclaiming her independence, but they would have to do until I could shop for replacements. Gerald picked me up at the hotel precisely at 2, a middle-aged woman with a professional camera in tow. "Mrs. Reynolds, this is Diane Summers, a certified property inspector and photographer. She'll document everything." The drive to Maple Street was shorter than I remembered, or perhaps it just felt that way due to my apprehension about what we might find. As we turned onto the familiar tree-lined street, I had an unexpected wave of nostalgia. Not for the house itself, but for the certainty of the life I'd led there. For all its faults, there had been comfort in the known. My Victorian stood graceful and imposing as always, its gingerbread trim and wraparound porch unchanged, despite whatever renovations might be happening inside. The bright yellow daffodils James and I had planted decades ago still lined the front walkway, oblivious to the human dramas unfolding around them. What was different was the large dumpster in the driveway, overflowing with what appeared to be my kitchen cabinets and sections of vintage wallpaper. Construction equipment littered the lawn, and the front door stood partially open. "Good, they've already stopped work," Gerald observed as we parked. The cease and desist was delivered first thing this morning. As we approached the front steps, Victoria emerged from the house, her expression shifting from surprise to barely concealed hostility when she saw me. "Margaret," she said coolly, "Andrew didn't mention you would be visiting." "I'm here to inspect my property," I replied, matching her tone. "This is my attorney, Gerald Hoffman, and Diane Summers, who will be documenting the current condition of the house." Victoria crossed her arms defensively. "Is that really necessary? We've only made improvements." "Unauthorized improvements to a property that doesn't belong to you," Gerald interjected smoothly. "Mrs. Reynolds has every right to document changes to her home." Victoria's mouth tightened, but she stepped aside. "Fine. The contractors have already been sent home for the day. I was just collecting some personal items." "Personal items," I echoed. She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Just some measurements for furniture we were considering." I chose not to pursue that particular thread and instead stepped past her into the front hall. The familiar scent of lemon polish and old wood had been replaced by sawdust and chemical cleaners. Furniture had been rearranged or removed entirely, with drop cloths covering what remained. "The kitchen has been partially demolished," Victoria said, following us inside. "It can't exactly be put back as it was." I walked through the dining room into what had once been my kitchen, the heart of the home where I'd prepared countless family meals, where James and I had shared morning coffee, where Andrew had done homework at the round oak table while I cooked dinner. Now it was a construction zone. The vintage cabinets had been ripped out, leaving ghosts of their outlines on the walls. The 1950s tile countertops were gone. Along with the farmhouse sink, James had refinished himself as a labor of love. Exposed wiring and plumbing jutted from the walls where appliances had been removed. "As you can see, the renovations were quite necessary," Victoria said, misinterpreting my silence for shock at the kitchen's previous condition rather than grief at its destruction. "The wiring was outdated, the plumbing barely functional." "The wiring was updated 5 years ago," I corrected her quietly, "and the plumbing was inspected annually." Diane moved around us, photographing every angle of the demolition, the flash of her camera punctuating the tense conversation. "Well, it wasn't to modern standards," Victoria insisted. "We were planning a much more functional space with granite, countertops and stainless appliances. For your use, not mine," I pointed out. Her cheeks flushed slightly. "The improvements would have benefited everyone, Margaret. Value add for the property." Gerald cleared his throat. "Let's continue the inspection, shall we?" We moved through the house methodically, with Diane documenting each room. The formal living room was relatively untouched, though furniture had been rearranged and some of my decorative items boxed up. The dining room's wallpaper had been partially stripped in one corner, revealing layers of previous patterns dating back to the house's construction in 1892. Upstairs, the main bathroom, had been gutted, with the clawfoot tub I'd so loved unceremoniously removed. The master bedroom, my bedroom, had been emptied of my furniture and personal items, with only the built-in window seat remaining. "Where are my things?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the growing sense of violation. "In storage," Victoria replied vaguely. "A facility on Westbrook Avenue. We kept everything important." "Who determined what was important?" She didn't answer, instead gesturing toward what had been Andrew's childhood bedroom. "We were planning to make this a home office. The third bedroom would have been Emily's." Throughout the tour, I maintained outward composure, but inwardly, I was processing a complex mixture of emotions: anger at the presumption that had led them to begin renovations before I was even settled at Sunny Pines, grief for the thoughtless destruction of spaces that held decades of memories, and underneath it all, a growing certainty that I could never live in this house again. Not with these changes. Not with this breach of trust hanging over every room. When we'd documented the entire house, Gerald suggested we check the basement and attic for any stored items that might have been disturbed. "That won't be necessary," Victoria said quickly. "Those areas haven't been touched yet." "Nevertheless, we'd like to confirm that," Gerald insisted. Reluctantly, Victoria led us to the basement door. "I haven't been down there myself. It's not in good condition." The basement told a different story than Victoria's dismissive assessment. While certainly cluttered with decades of family possessions, it was dry, clean, and well organized, because I had made it so. Labeled boxes lined the metal shelving James had installed, containing everything from holiday decorations to Andrew's childhood art projects to financial records I'd meticulously preserved. Or they had contained those things. Now, many boxes were open, their contents visibly disturbed, some emptied entirely. In one corner, garbage bags were filled with what appeared to be papers and photographs. "What's in those bags?" I asked, pointing. Victoria shrugged. "Just old papers. Nothing valuable." I walked over and opened the nearest bag, pulling out a handful of its contents. They were photographs, dozens of them, spanning decades of family history. Pictures of James's parents at their 50th anniversary, Andrew's baby photos, candid shots of family vacations and holiday gatherings. "These were going to be thrown away?" I asked, my voice finally betraying the emotion I'd been suppressing. "They were just duplicates and random shots," Victoria defended. "We were organizing, not disposing." "Into garbage bags?" She had no response for that. Diane photographed the basement meticulously, including the open boxes and bags of discarded family history. Gerald made notes on his legal pad, his expression growing increasingly grim. The attic revealed similar disruption. Family heirlooms had been sorted into keep and donate piles, with the donate pile substantially larger. My grandmother's quilts, handmade and irreplaceable, had been deemed unworthy of keeping. The antique writing desk where James had penned letters to me during our courtship was marked for consignment. By the time we completed the inspection, I was emotionally exhausted but clearer than ever about my next steps. This house, despite decades of memories, was no longer my home. It had been violated, its history deemed disposable, its character marked for modernization to suit someone else's taste. "I've seen enough," I told Gerald as we prepared to leave. "I'd like to proceed with selling the property." Victoria, who had been trailing us throughout the inspection, stopped abruptly. "Selling? You can't be serious. After all the work we've already put in?" "Work I never authorized on a house I own," I reminded her. "But what about our agreement? Andrew said you were considering our offer to create an in-law suite." "I made no such agreement. And given what I've seen today, I have no interest in sharing this space with you and Andrew under any arrangement." Victoria's cool facade finally cracked. That's completely unreasonable. We've invested thousands already in materials and contractor deposits. Andrew's been working night and day on plans to accommodate you. Perhaps you should have confirmed my wishes before making those investments, I suggested. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're finished here. As we walked toward the front door, Victoria pulled out her phone. I'm calling Andrew. This is ridiculous. Feel free, I replied. Gerald can explain the legal situation to him directly. Outside on the porch, I took a moment to gather myself, looking out at the spring blooms in the garden I'd tended for 4 decades. I'd known intellectually what Andrew and Victoria had planned for my home, but seeing the physical reality of their changes, the casual discarding of family history, the presumptuous rearrangement of spaces I'd carefully maintained, crystallized something in me that had been slowly forming since that first day at Sunny Pines. This chapter of my life was ending, not because my son had placed me in a nursing home, but because I was finally ready to write a new one. The offshore accounts weren't just financial safeguards. They were freedom to reimagine my remaining years without obligation to preserve what had been. Gerald joined me on the porch, his expression sympathetic. Mrs. Reynolds, what you've experienced here constitutes elder abuse under Connecticut law. The unauthorized disposal of personal property, the renovation without consent, these are serious matters. I don't want to pursue legal action against my son, I said firmly. I just want to move forward. I understand. But you should be aware that you have grounds for more than just stopping the renovations. You could seek damages, particularly for irreplaceable items that may have been discarded. The thought of family photographs in garbage bags, of James's, carefully crafted carpentry ripped from walls, of heirlooms casually marked for donation. It stung deeply. But litigation would only prolong the painful transition I needed to make. Let's focus on selling the house, I decided. I'll need a real estate agent who can handle a property in this transitional state. I can recommend several excellent agents who specialize in historic homes, Gerald offered. They'll understand how to market the property despite the partial renovations. As we were about to leave, Andrew's car screeched into the driveway, parking haphazardly behind Gerald's sedan. He emerged looking harried and angry, his tie askew as if he'd rushed from an important meeting. "Mom, what are you doing?" he demanded, striding up the walkway. "Victoria says you're talking about selling the house now." "That's correct," I confirmed calmly. After seeing the state of the renovations and the handling of my personal belongings, I've decided selling is the best option. Andrew ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "This is insane. We can fix whatever you're upset about. If you don't like the kitchen design, we can change it. If something's missing, we can find it. It's not about the design, Andrew. It's about respect. You and Victoria began dismantling my home before I was even settled at Sunny Pines. You boxed up my memories, discarded family photographs, and planned to repurpose every room without any real consideration for my wishes." "That's not true," he protested. "We were trying to create a space that would work for everyone. An in-law suite for you, room for us and Emily. It made financial sense." "For you," I pointed out. "Not for me. We're family. Aren't we supposed to help each other? Isn't that what you and Dad always taught me?" "Help, yes. Take advantage, no." I softened my tone slightly. "Andrew, I understand you believe you were acting in everyone's best interest. But the way you've gone about this, moving me to Sunny Pines, starting renovations without my explicit consent, sorting through my belongings and deciding what was important, it demonstrates a fundamental lack of respect for me as an autonomous person." He looked genuinely bewildered. "But you're my mother. I was taking care of you, like you took care of me all those years." "Taking care of someone doesn't mean making decisions for them without their input. It doesn't mean assuming you know better than they do about their own lives." Gerald, who had been observing our exchange in professional silence, gently interjected. Mr. Reynolds, your mother has the legal right to sell her property. The unauthorized renovations actually constitute a form of financial exploitation. Under Connecticut law. Andrew's face flushed with anger. Exploitation? Are you kidding me? I've spent thousands of dollars on materials, on contractor deposits. For renovations she never approved, Gerald pointed out, on a house you don't own. I was trying to create a solution that worked for everyone. Except it didn't work for me, I said quietly. And it's my house, Andrew. Victoria emerged onto the porch, her arms crossed defensively. This is absurd. We were doing you a favor, Margaret. That kitchen was ancient. The bathroom fixtures were practically antiques. We were bringing everything up to modern standards. I liked my antiques, I replied simply. They were chosen with care and maintained with love. Well, it's too late now, she snapped. The kitchen and bathroom are already gutted. The contractors can't exactly put everything back the way it was. I'm aware of that, I acknowledged. Which is why selling is the logical next step. A new owner can complete the renovations to their own taste. Andrew stared at me, a mixture of confusion and hurt in his expression. I don't understand what's happened to you, Mom. Ever since that fall, you've been different. More stubborn, less reasonable. I haven't changed, Andrew. What's changed is my willingness to remain silent when my boundaries are crossed. The fall and your subsequent actions simply made me realize how easily my life could be taken over if I didn't stand firm. And the offshore accounts? He asked bitterly. Were those part of standing firm too? Hiding money from your only son for decades? Your father and I established those accounts as protection, not deception. We hoped you'd mature into someone who respected others' autonomy, who didn't view your parents' resources as an extension of your own. The words hung in the spring air, harsher than I'd intended, but truthful nonetheless. Andrew's face reflected. The impact of hearing his parents' assessment of his character laid bare after so many years. Victoria, sensing her husband's distress, stepped forward. This conversation is pointless. If you're determined to sell, then sell. But don't expect us to help with the process or support this irrational decision. I don't expect anything, I said. That's rather the point. Gerald suggested we conclude the visit, noting that all necessary documentation had been completed. As we prepared to leave, Andrew made one final appeal. Mom, please, think about Emily. She loves this house. All her memories of Dad are here. Emily and I discussed this earlier today, I replied. She understands better than you might expect. You've seen Emily? When? This morning. She visited me at the hotel. Andrew's expression darkened. Without telling us? Victoria, did you know about this? Victoria shook her head, looking equally surprised and displeased. Emily is 16, not 6, I reminded them. She's capable of deciding who she wants. To visit. That's not the point, Andrew snapped. We're her parents. We have a right to know where she is. Perhaps that's a conversation you should have with Emily, I suggested, not wanting to further complicate my granddaughter's position. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have other matters to attend to. As Gerald, Diane, and I walked to the car, I could feel Andrew and Victoria's stares burning into my back. The weight of familial expectation, of unspoken assumptions about my role as mother and grandmother, pressed against me with almost physical force. But with each step toward Gerald's sedan, that weight lightened incrementally, replaced by the unfamiliar but welcome sensation of choosing my own path. In the car, Gerald waited until we were driving away before speaking. That was difficult. You handled it with remarkable composure. Necessary, not difficult, I corrected, though the emotional toll was catching up with me now that we were safely departed. Seeing the house like that, it clarified things. In what way? I considered the question, watching familiar landmarks of Riverside pass by the window. I realized I've been preserving that house as a museum to my marriage, to Andrew's childhood, to a life that doesn't exist anymore. Even if Andrew and Victoria hadn't started renovations, it might still be time to let it go. That's a profound realization, Gerald observed. Many of my clients struggle with that transition. The offshore accounts make it possible, I acknowledged. Without them, I might be forced to cling to the house simply for financial security. Speaking of which, we should discuss your housing options moving forward. The hotel is fine temporarily, but you'll want something more permanent. Actually, I've been thinking about that. I mentioned to my friend Sophia at Sunny Pines the possibility of finding a place together, sharing expenses, hiring help as needed. Gerald nodded thoughtfully. That could be an excellent arrangement, particularly if you're compatible roommates. Have you discussed specifics? Not yet. It was just an idea I floated before leaving. But I think I'll call her this evening to explore it further. Back at the hotel, I thanked Gerald and Diane for their assistance and arranged to meet the following day to discuss real estate agents and next steps for selling the Victorian. Once alone, I ordered room service and called Sophia. Suddenly, eager to share the day's developments and explore our potential living arrangement. "Peggy," she exclaimed when she answered, "I was just thinking about you. How's freedom treating you?" "It's been illuminating," I replied, settling onto the hotel bed. "I visited the house today." "Ah, and how bad was it?" "Worse than I expected. Kitchen and bathroom gutted, personal items boxed up or thrown away, family photographs in garbage bags." Sophia made a sound of sympathetic outrage. "Barbaric! What are you going to do?" "Sell it," I said decisively. "Start fresh somewhere else." "Good for you." She paused, then added more hesitantly, "And that proposition you mentioned before leaving, about finding a place together? Still, very much on the table if you're interested." "I've been thinking about it constantly," Sophia admitted. "The idea of leaving Sunny Pines is terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. My arthritis makes some days difficult, but with proper help." "We could afford excellent help," I assured her. "Between my offshore accounts and whatever resources you have, we could create a comfortable living situation with as much or as little assistance as we need." "What kind of place are you thinking? Another house? A condo?" I considered the question. "Something smaller than the Victorian, certainly. Maybe a single-level condo in a building with an elevator. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a good kitchen since we both enjoy cooking. Someplace with character but without the maintenance headaches of an older home." "Near the water?" Sophia suggested. "I've always loved being close to the ocean." "That could be arranged. Riverside has several nice developments along the river, and we're not far from the coast." We spent the next hour discussing possibilities, our conversation flowing from practical considerations about accessibility to more whimsical ideas about decor and entertaining. By the time we hung up, a plan was taking shape, not just for housing, but for a new chapter of life neither of us had anticipated. That evening, as I prepared for bed in my anonymous hotel room, I found myself filled with a strange, buoyant energy despite the emotional upheaval of the day. The vision of the Victorian, altered beyond recognition in some areas, its history casually discarded, should have left me bereft. Instead, it had severed the last sentimental ties binding me to a past that could never be recovered. James was gone. Andrew was an adult with his own family and priorities. The offshore accounts we'd established as protection had become liberation instead. Whatever came next would be my choice, my creation, my life to design according to my own preferences rather than others' expectations. As I drifted toward sleep, I thought of Emily's words earlier that day. Sometimes you need a fresh start. At 16, she had grasped intuitively what I was only now learning at 68. That beginnings were possible at any age, that independence wasn't selfish but necessary, and that standing firm in one's own truth was not an act of defiance, but of self-respect. Tomorrow would bring realtors and legal paperwork, decisions about listing prices and disclosure requirements. But it would also bring possibilities I had not considered in decades, places to explore, ways to live, versions of Margaret Reynolds I had never allowed myself to imagine. The following weeks unfolded with remarkable efficiency. Gerald connected me with Elaine Moretti, a realtor who specialized in historic properties and who, upon seeing the Victorian, immediately recognized its potential despite the interrupted renovations. "The bones are magnificent," she declared, running her hand along the original crown molding in the dining room. "And ironically, the half-finished state may work in your favor. Buyers who want historic charm with modern amenities can finish the renovations to their own specifications." She recommended listing the house as is, with full disclosure about the renovation status. "We'll price it accordingly, but given the location and the character of the home, I expect significant interest." "How long will it take to sell?" I asked, conscious of my temporary housing situation at the Riverside Hotel. Elaine considered this. "The market for historic homes is always somewhat specialized, but with the right marketing, I'd estimate 60 to 90 days for a solid offer. Possibly sooner if we find a buyer who appreciates the opportunity to customize the unfinished spaces." 90 days in a hotel seemed daunting, but it was a necessary transition. Meanwhile, Sophia and I had graduated from vague discussions about cohabitation to concrete planning. She had submitted her 30-day notice to Sunny Pines, a prospect that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "What if I can't manage outside institutional care?" she fretted during one of our daily phone calls. "Then we'll hire whatever help you need," I assured her. "The difference is that you'll be making those decisions, not having them made for you." With Sophia's departure date set for the end of May, finding a suitable shared residence became my primary focus. I spent days touring condominiums and apartments throughout Riverside and neighboring coastal towns, searching for the perfect balance of accessibility, location, and character. None felt quite right until I stumbled upon the Lighthouse Point Residences, a recently renovated building that had once been a textile mill along the river. The conversion had maintained the building's industrial charm: exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings, massive windows, while creating thoroughly modern living spaces with elevators, wide doorways, and other accessible features. A 2-bedroom unit on the 4th floor captured my attention immediately. Its wall of windows overlooked the river, filling the space with natural light. The open floor plan would accommodate Sophia's walker, and the modern kitchen was designed with accessibility in mind. Best of all, the building offered services like housekeeping and maintenance, providing support without sacrificing independence. The price was substantial, $650,000, but with the expected proceeds from the Victorian and my offshore resources, it was well within reach. After bringing Sophia to see it via a carefully arranged outing from Sunny Pines, we made an offer the same day. "I never imagined living somewhere so contemporary," Sophia marveled as we completed the paperwork. "Eduardo would be scandalized. He believed anything built after 1950 was architecturally suspect." "James might have agreed with him," I laughed, "but times change, so do we." 3 days later, our offer was accepted. With a closing date set for mid-June, the pieces of my new life were falling into place with surprising speed. The Victorian was listed the following week, its marketing materials emphasizing the unique opportunity to complete a historic home renovation. Within days, showings were scheduled, and Elaine reported significant interest despite the property's unfinished state. Andrew's reaction to the listing was predictably volatile. He called the moment the "for sale" sign appeared in the front yard. "You're really going through with this?" he said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and resignation. "I drove by today and saw the sign." "Yes, the listing went live yesterday. There are already several showings scheduled." A long pause followed. "Where will you go? Back to Sunny Pines?" "No, I've purchased a condominium at Lighthouse Point. Sophia Martinez, my friend from Sunny Pines, will be moving in with me." The woman with the walker? Mom, you barely know her. I know her well enough to recognize we have compatible personalities and similar needs. We're both capable of independent living with minimal support, but will benefit from sharing expenses and having companionship. Andrew sighed heavily. This is happening so fast. The offshore accounts, leaving Sunny Pines, selling the house. It's like you've become a different person overnight. Not different, I corrected gently. More authentic. More willing to advocate for what I truly want, rather than what others expect of me. And what about what I want? What about Emily? Doesn't family factor into these decisions at all? I felt a familiar pang of maternal guilt, quickly followed by the resolve I'd been cultivating since leaving Sunny Pines. Emily will always be welcome in my home, wherever that home might be. As for you, Andrew, I've spent decades considering your needs and preferences, often at the expense of my own. It's time for a more balanced approach. So this is punishment? For moving you to Sunny Pines? No, it's the natural consequence of your actions. There's a difference. Another long silence. Victoria is furious about the money we spent on renovations. She wants to speak with your lawyer about compensation. Of course she did. Gerald's contact information is on the cease and desist letter. She's welcome to reach out, but I should warn you that pursuing this could open up discussion of the personal property that was disposed of without my consent. Nothing valuable was thrown away, Andrew insisted. Value is subjective. Family photographs might have little monetary worth, but are irreplaceable to me. He had no response to that, and after a few more minutes of strained conversation, we said goodbye. The call left me unsettled, but also reinforced my commitment to the path I'd chosen. Andrew needed to adjust to our new relationship dynamic, one in which I made independent decisions and he respected them, even when they didn't align with his preferences. The following Saturday, Emily visited me at the hotel, curious about the condo purchase and full of questions about my plans. Dad says you're moving in with some lady from the nursing home, she said, helping herself to the room service cookies I'd ordered for her visit. Is that true? Partially. Sophia was at Sunny Pines, yes, but she's hardly some lady. She's a retired literature professor with arthritis and a wicked sense of humor. We've decided to share the condo at Lighthouse Point. Emily's eyes widened. The old mill building? That's so cool. I've seen pictures online, those huge windows and the brick walls. Very industrial chic. I smiled at her enthusiasm. Exactly. And the location is perfect, right on the river with walking paths and little shops nearby. When can I see it? The closing is mid-June, so probably right after that. Though I warn you, it will be empty until our furniture is delivered. She shrugged, unconcerned. I don't care. I just want to see your new place. It sounds way more interesting than Grandpa's old house, honestly. Her casual dismissal of the Victorian surprised me. You're not upset about me selling the house? Your father seemed to think you'd be devastated. Emily rolled her eyes expressively. Dad thinks I'm still like 12. I mean, yeah, I have memories there, but it's just a house. And honestly, it was kind of depressing watching you rattling around in that big place all alone after Grandpa died. Her perceptiveness continually amazed me. That's very insightful, Emily. Plus, she added, reaching for another cookie, the Lighthouse Point is like 2 blocks from riverfront ice cream, which makes the absolute best salted caramel in Connecticut. I laughed. I'll keep that in mind. We spent the afternoon looking at furniture websites, with Emily offering strong opinions about everything from sofa styles to kitchen appliances. Her taste ran more contemporary than mine, but I found myself appreciating her perspective and occasionally deferring to her judgment, particularly regarding technology for the new space. You absolutely need a smart home system, she insisted. Voice-controlled lights, thermostat, security. It's perfect for accessibility. Plus, it's just way more convenient. I'll consider it, I promised, amused by her earnestness. Though, I draw the line at those devices that listen to everything you say. Grandma, your phone already does that, she informed me, gesturing to my smartphone. Might as well get the benefits along with the surveillance. As our visit concluded, Emily grew unexpectedly serious. Can I ask you something, Grandma? About Dad? Of course. Is he in trouble? Financially, I mean. He and Mom have been having a lot of intense discussions behind closed doors. I heard Mom say something about credit card debt and the renovation costs they can't recover. I chose my words carefully, not wanting to burden Emily with adult concerns, but also unwilling to dismiss her legitimate observations. Your father and I have different approaches to financial management. He tends to anticipate resources before they're secured. You mean he spends money he doesn't have? Emily translated bluntly. Sometimes, yes. The renovation was started with the expectation that they would eventually own the house, either through me or after I was gone. Emily nodded thoughtfully. That explains why Mom's been so stressed about the Amex bill, and why they suddenly started talking about me maybe going to Connecticut State instead of Northeastern for marine biology. The implication that Andrew and Victoria's financial decisions might impact Emily's educational opportunities troubled me deeply. Emily, whatever happens between your father and me, I want you to know that your college education is important to me. When the time comes, I'd like to help ensure you can attend the school that's right for your goals. Her eyes widened slightly. Really? Because Northeastern has this amazing co-op program with the New England Aquarium, but it's super expensive, and with Dad's business being sort of unstable lately. We'll figure it out when the time comes, I promised. Just focus on your applications and maintaining your grades. After Emily left, I reflected on our conversation with mixed emotions. The insight into Andrew and Victoria's financial struggles was concerning, but not entirely surprising. Their lifestyle in Lakeview Estates had always seemed precariously balanced on expected future windfalls rather than current resources. I called Natalie to discuss establishing a college fund for Emily, something separate from my other accounts and specifically designated for educational expenses. The following morning, we met at Sterling Financial to set up the arrangement. This is very generous, Natalie commented as we reviewed the paperwork. Approximately how much do you want to allocate? Enough for 4 years at a private university? Including living expenses, I decided, based on current rates with projected increases. She made some calculations. $300,000 should be sufficient, possibly with some remaining depending on scholarship opportunities. It was a substantial sum, but I had the resources, and Emily's education was a priority I shared with James. He would have approved of this allocation. There's one other matter, I added as Natalie prepared the documents. I'd like to make provisions for Sophia Martinez in my estate planning. We're purchasing property together and sharing living expenses, but her financial resources are more limited than mine. Natalie nodded. We can schedule a meeting with our estate planning specialist. There are several options to consider. Joint, tenancy with right of survivorship for the property, perhaps a trust for ongoing care needs if necessary. As May progressed, preparations for both my departure from the Riverside Hotel and Sophia's exit from Sunny Pines accelerated. I had begun purchasing furnishings for the new condominium, selecting pieces that balanced aesthetics with Sophia's mobility needs, sofas at the right height for easy rising, tables with space for a walker to navigate, a shower bench for her arthritic days. Coordinating the logistics of the move presented challenges. The closing date for the condominium was June 15th, but Sophia needed to leave Sunny Pines by May 31st. The solution came unexpectedly from Claire Wilson, the social worker at Sunny Pines, who had been quietly supportive during my brief stay. There's a transitional apartment in our outpatient building, she explained when I called to discuss the timing dilemma. It's designed for exactly this situation. Residents who are moving toward independent living but need temporary accommodations. Sophia could stay there for 2 weeks until your new place is ready. With that hurdle resolved, the remaining pieces fell into place. I hired a moving company experienced in assisting seniors, arranged for the delivery of new furniture to coincide with our move-in date, and continued working with Elaine to manage showings of the Victorian. Interest in the property had been strong, with 12 viewings in the first 2 weeks. We have 2 potential buyers who seem particularly serious, Elaine reported. One is a couple with renovation experience who appreciate the opportunity to customize. The other is a historical preservation enthusiast who wants to restore the original features that remain while modernizing carefully. The second one sounds promising, I noted, thinking of James's love for the home's historic character. They're preparing an offer now, Elaine confirmed. I expect we'll have something to review by early next week. On the morning of May 31st, I arrived at Sunny Pines to accompany Sophia to her transitional apartment. The familiar medicinal smell and institutional atmosphere hit me with unexpected force, a vivid reminder of how close I had come to having my independence permanently curtailed. Sophia was waiting in her room, her meager belongings packed into 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. Like me, she had been limited in what she could bring to Sunny Pines, and was eager to replace discarded possessions with new items that reflected her current taste. "Ready for your jailbreak?" I asked, embracing her carefully. "More than ready," she confirmed, her eyes bright with anticipation. I had the worst dream last night that they wouldn't let me leave, that I'd missed some paperwork deadline and was trapped forever. No chance of that. I've personally confirmed all your discharge documents are in order. Claire arrived to escort us to the transitional apartment, a small but pleasantly furnished 1-bedroom unit in an adjacent building. Though still technically part of Sunny Pines, it had a separate entrance, a full kitchen, and notably, no scheduled mealtimes or medication checks. "You'll have access to all facility amenities," Claire explained as she showed us around. "The dining room if you don't feel like cooking, the library, the garden, but you'll come and go as you please, with your own key." Sophia surveyed the space with approval. "It's smaller than I expected, but for 2 weeks, it's absolutely perfect. The outpatient nurse will check in once daily," Claire continued, "just to ensure you're adjusting well to the transition. But otherwise, you're independent here." After helping Sophia unpack and confirming she had everything she needed, I prepared to leave. "I'll pick you up tomorrow for our furniture shopping expedition," I reminded her. 10 o'clock? "I'll be ready," she promised, with a list of must-haves for my bedroom. As I turned to go, Sophia caught my hand. "Peggy, wait. I need to say something." Her expression was uncharacteristically solemn. "Thank you, not just for the physical help with all this, but for making me believe I could have a life outside these walls again." The simple sincerity of her gratitude touched me deeply. "We're helping each other," I reminded her. "I'd be facing this new chapter alone if not for you." Still, when my own daughter thought I was basically finished with independent living, you saw something different. "I recognized a kindred spirit," I said simply. "Someone who still had adventures left in her." Sophia's eyes glistened suspiciously. "Well, enough sentimentality. We have furniture to buy and a condo to furnish. No time for tearful speeches." I laughed, squeezing her hand before releasing it. "Exactly right. Save your energy for debating sofa fabrics tomorrow." As I drove back to the Riverside Hotel, I realized how much having Sophia in my life had shaped my post-Sunny Pines decisions. Without her friendship, I might have simply returned to the Victorian, accepting the damage done and attempting to restore what I could. Instead, I had embraced a completely new direction, one that promised companionship, shared expenses, and the stimulation of different perspectives. The following day brought the first concrete offer on the Victorian. Elaine presented it during a meeting at her office, her expression cautiously optimistic. It's from the historical preservation enthusiast Daniel Parker. He's offering $625,000, which is $25,000 below asking, but he's willing to take the property, as is with no contingencies except standard inspection. I considered the offer. The price was fair given the interrupted renovations, and the no contingencies term would expedite the closing process. What's his timeline? He can close in 30 days, which would be ideal given your condo purchase. And he genuinely wants to preserve the historical elements? Elaine nodded. He specifically mentioned restoring the elements that remain and carefully matching period details for what's been removed. He has experience with 3 other Victorian renovations in New England. The synchronicity of the timing with my condo closing, combined with the buyer's appreciation for the home's historic character, felt right. After reviewing the details once more, I signed the acceptance documents. "Congratulations," Elaine said warmly. "If all goes according to schedule, you'll close on July 1st. As I left her office, I felt a curious mixture of emotions: relief that the house would be sold quickly, satisfaction that the buyer would respect its character, and a faint melancholy at the finality of the transaction. The Victorian had been my home for over 4 decades, the backdrop for my marriage, Andrew's childhood, and my early widowhood. Selling it marked the definitive end of that chapter of my life, yet the melancholy was tempered by genuine excitement about what lay ahead. The condominium at Lighthouse Point represented not just a new living space but a new framework for this stage of my life, one chosen deliberately rather than inherited or expected. I called Andrew to inform him of the accepted offer, unsure how he would receive the news. $625,000? He repeated after I shared the details. That seems low for the neighborhood. It's fair considering the state of the renovations, I pointed out. And the buyer wants to restore the historical elements, which matters to me, I suppose. His tone suggested he was processing multiple implications. When is the closing? July 1st, if all goes as planned. I'll need to remove any remaining personal items before then. A pause. There are still some boxes in the attic and basement that we hadn't sorted yet. I'll arrange to have them moved to storage until I can go through them properly. Andrew cleared his throat. I could help with that. Sorting, I mean. There might be family things that Emily would want eventually. The offer surprised me. That would be appreciated, I said carefully. Though I should warn you, I'm still upset about the photographs and memorabilia that were discarded. I know. Victoria was overzealous about decluttering, but I've actually recovered some of those items from the garage before they went to donation. The quilts, and I think most of the photo albums. This unexpected act of consideration softened my stance slightly. Thank you, Andrew. That means a lot to me. Yeah, well. He sounded uncomfortable with the acknowledgement. When did you want to do this sorting? We arranged for the following Sunday, giving me mixed feelings about spending extended time with Andrew after our recent conflicts. Yet there was also hope that this practical task might provide neutral ground for beginning to rebuild our relationship. The week before the sorting session, I threw myself into preparations for the new condominium. Sophia and I spent days selecting furniture, debating everything from mattress firmness to the merits of various kitchen appliances. Though our tastes sometimes diverged, Sophia preferred traditional styling while I leaned toward transitional pieces. We found comfortable compromises and genuinely enjoyed the process of creating our shared home. I never got to do this with Eduardo, Sophia confessed as we deliberated between dining tables. He came with a house full of family heirlooms that couldn't possibly be replaced, so my decorating input was limited to throw pillows and occasional tables. James was similarly attached to certain pieces, I remembered. His grandfather's roll-top desk, the mission-style bookcase. I worked around them for 40 years. And now we get to choose everything, Sophia said with satisfaction. No compromising with ghostly preferences. By the time Sunday arrived, we had ordered most of the essential furniture for the condominium, scheduled deliveries for the week after closing, and even selected paint colors for the few walls that needed refreshing. The pace of change was exhilarating, if occasionally overwhelming. Andrew arrived at the Victorian precisely at the agreed time, Emily unexpectedly in tow. She insisted on coming, he explained as they walked up the porch steps. Something about historic preservation. Emily grinned. I want to meet the buyer if he's here. I'm considering architecture as a career option if marine biology doesn't work out. He's not here today, I explained, but I can introduce you when he does the final walkthrough before closing. The three of us stood awkwardly in the partially dismantled front hall, surrounded by the peculiar energy of a house in transition. No longer truly mine, not yet belonging to someone else. Where should we start? Andrew finally asked. The attic, I think, I decided. The most important items are up there. As we climbed the stairs, I was acutely aware of the gap between this visit and my last inspection of the property. The tension with Andrew remained, but it had shifted from active conflict to something more nuanced, a mutual recognition that our relationship was in flux, seeking a new equilibrium. The attic was much as I remembered, with boxes and furniture sorted into keep and donate piles. Emily immediately gravitated toward a trunk containing vintage clothing, while Andrew began examining a stack of photo albums he had apparently rescued from Victoria's purge. Most of these were in the garage, he explained, opening one to reveal black and white images of my parents' wedding. Victoria had them marked for donation, but I thought, well, they seemed important. The simple acknowledgement that these family artifacts held value touched me unexpectedly. They are important. Thank you for saving them. For the next few hours, we worked through the accumulated belongings of decades, each item carrying its own weight of memory. James's collection of first edition mystery novels, my grandmother's hand-embroidered linens, Andrew's childhood artwork, carefully preserved in acid-free folders. Oh my God, is this Dad? Emily exclaimed, holding up a school photograph of 8-year-old Andrew, his front teeth missing and his cowlick standing defiantly on end. He looks exactly like my cousin Tyler. The Reynolds cowlick is a dominant gene, I confirmed, smiling, at the memory of James trying vainly to tame Andrew's hair before that very photo session. Andrew took the picture, studying it with a complex expression. I remember this day. Dad was so frustrated because I'd lost my good shirt, and we had to use the backup one with the weird collar. He wasn't really angry, I recalled. Just running, late for work and trying to get you presentable for pictures. He was always running late, Andrew said, a smile softening his features. But he never missed a school event somehow, even with his crazy hospital schedule. This shared remembrance of James created a momentary bridge between us, a reminder of the family bonds that existed beyond our current conflicts. Emily sensed it too, asking questions about her grandfather that prompted more stories, more shared memories. By mid-afternoon, we had sorted most of the attic contents into categories. Items to move to my storage unit, pieces Emily wanted to keep, donations for various charities, and a small selection of memorabilia Andrew requested. The process had been surprisingly cordial, even enjoyable at times. As we prepared to tackle the basement, Andrew paused on the stairs. Mom, there's something I should tell you about our financial situation. I waited, sensing this was difficult, for him to articulate. Victoria and we're in trouble. The renovations maxed out 2 credit cards. We've been carrying balances for years, actually, but this pushed us over the edge. And my business has been struggling since we lost the Westbrook account last year. This partially explained the urgency behind their plan to move into my house. I suspected something like that, I acknowledged. Emily mentioned hearing discussions about credit card debt. Andrew looked startled. Emily knows. We've been trying to shield her from our financial issues. She's perceptive. And almost 17. She notices more than you realize. He sighed heavily. We might have to sell the Lakeview house. Move somewhere smaller. Victoria's furious about it. Blames me for counting on inheriting your house eventually. The blunt acknowledgement that they had been planning around my eventual death was jarring, though not entirely surprising. I'm sorry you're facing financial difficulties, I said carefully. But Andrew, even if I had stayed at Sunny Pines, even if you had completed the renovations to my house, it wouldn't have solved the underlying issue. Which is? That you spend beyond your means, that you've been doing so since college. His expression hardened slightly. Not everyone can be as financially disciplined as you and Dad. Some of us take risks. Risks are one thing. Constant financial brinkmanship is another. I softened my tone. I'm not saying this to criticize, just to point out that inheriting my house wouldn't have fixed the pattern. Andrew was quiet for a long moment. Maybe not, but it would have bought us time. And then what? What happens when the next financial crisis hits? He had no answer for that, and we continued down to the basement in silence. The conversation had veered into uncomfortable territory, yet it felt important, a more honest exchange than I had in years. As we sorted through the basement storage, a task made easier by Victoria's previous organization, Emily discovered a collection of James's old wooden puzzles, intricately crafted brain teasers he had collected over the years. These are amazing, she enthused, trying to solve a particularly challenging one. Can I have them for my room? Of course, I agreed. Your grandfather would love knowing you're using them. Andrew watched his daughter working on the puzzle, his expression thoughtful. Dad used to challenge me with those, said they built patience and problem-solving skills. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. Clearly, I didn't inherit his patience. You inherited other qualities, I pointed out. His charm, his ability to connect with people, his creativity. But not his financial sense, Andrew said quietly. That's a skill that can be learned at any age, I responded, seeing an opening for a different kind of conversation. If you're interested. He looked at me sharply. What do you mean? I managed the family finances for 40 years, Andrew. I helped hundreds of clients at First Savings balance their budgets and plan for their futures. If you wanted, I could help you create a plan to address your current situation. The offer hung between us, representing more than financial advice. It was an outstretched hand, a potential new foundation for our relationship based on mutual respect rather than dependence or obligation. Andrew seemed to recognize the significance of the moment. I might take you up on that, he said finally. Not today, but soon. By late afternoon, we had completed the sorting and loaded my car with the items destined for storage. As Andrew and Emily prepared to leave, there was an awkward moment on the porch. Not quite a reconciliation, but a thawing of the ice that had formed between us. Thank you for your help today, I said sincerely. It would have been a much harder task alone. It was actually nice, Andrew admitted, going through all those old things, remembering. Emily, less constrained by adult pride, hugged me warmly. This was way better than I expected, and I want to hear more stories about Dad as a kid next time, especially the embarrassing ones. I have plenty of those, I assured her with a smile. As their car pulled away, I stood on the porch of the Victorian one last time, watching the familiar silhouette of my son and granddaughter diminish down Maple Street. The day had been unexpected in many ways. The tentative reconnection with Andrew, the joy of sharing family history with Emily, the bittersweet process of disentangling myself from the physical repository of 4 decades of memories. Whatever came next in our family dynamics, it would be built on a more honest foundation. Andrew had acknowledged his financial struggles and accepted, at least tacitly, that some of his recent actions had been driven by those pressures rather than genuine concern for my welfare. I had offered help without criticism, expertise without control. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And as I drove away from the Victorian for what might be the last time, I felt lighter, not despite the complexity of the day's emotions, but because of them. Real relationships, I was learning, could withstand honesty and boundaries. Perhaps they even thrived on them. On the morning of June 15th, I signed the final documents making Unit 407 at Lighthouse Point officially mine and Sophia's. The closing process was remarkably straightforward, the funds from my offshore accounts transferring smoothly to cover the purchase price and associated costs. "Congratulations," said the closing attorney, handing me the keys with a smile. "The property is yours." Sophia, who had insisted on accompanying me despite her arthritis flaring up, squeezed my hand excitedly. "Let's go see our new home." Our new home. The phrase still felt novel, even after weeks of planning and preparation. Our new home, not just a place I had inhabited for decades out of inertia and attachment, but a space we had chosen deliberately to suit our current needs and preferences. When we arrived at Lighthouse Point, the building manager greeted us warmly and escorted us to the 4th floor. Though I had toured the unit multiple times during the purchase process, entering it now as the owner created an entirely different sensation. The soaring windows, the exposed brick walls, the gleaming hardwood floors, all now belonged to us. "It's really ours," Sophia breathed, using her walker to move slowly through the empty space. "I keep expecting someone to appear and tell us there's been a mistake, that we need to go back to Sunny Pines immediately." "No mistakes," I assured her. "And no going back." We spent the next hour measuring spaces and confirming furniture delivery, schedules. The major pieces would arrive the following day: beds, dressers, the dining table, the sectional sofa we had carefully selected for both comfort and ease of rising. Smaller items would follow throughout the week. "What should we do tonight?" Sophia asked as we prepared to leave. "We're still technically homeless until the furniture arrives. I've made reservations at the Lighthouse restaurant," I replied. "A celebration dinner." "Fancy. Do I need to change?" She glanced down at her comfortable but casual outfit. "Not at all. We're celebrating our independence, not conforming to someone else's dress code." The Lighthouse restaurant, perched on pilings extending into the river, offered spectacular sunset views and a menu featuring local seafood. As we were shown to a table overlooking the water, I noticed several well-dressed couples glancing curiously at Sophia's walker and our casual attire. But rather than feeling self-conscious, I found myself amused by their scrutiny. Their opinions held no power over me anymore. "To new beginnings," I said, raising my glass once our wine had been poured. "And to unexpected friendships," Sophia added with a smile. As the rich golden light of sunset spilled across our table, we discussed our plans for the coming days, furniture arrangements, grocery deliveries, the smart home system Emily had insisted upon. "I keep having to remind myself that we can make decisions without consulting anyone," Sophia confessed. "After 3 years at Sunny Pines, being told when to eat, when to take medications, when to participate in activities, this freedom is almost dizzying." "I know exactly what you mean," I agreed. Even before Sunny Pines, I spent years conforming to others' expectations, being the perfect wife, the supportive mother, the reliable employee, always putting my own preferences last. "No more of that," Sophia declared firmly. "In this chapter, we prioritize ourselves." The waiter appeared with our entrees: seared scallops for me, grilled salmon for Sophia, providing a natural pause in the conversation. As we enjoyed our meal, I found myself reflecting on how dramatically my life had changed in just a few short months. From the constrained existence at Sunny Pines to this moment of celebration and anticipation, the journey had been both challenging and liberating. "Penny for your thoughts," Sophia prompted, as I absently swirled the remaining wine in my glass. I was just thinking about transformation, I replied. How sometimes it takes a crisis to shock us out of comfortable patterns that no longer serve us. Like being placed in a nursing home by your son? She raised an eyebrow. Exactly like that, I laughed. As painful as it was, I'm not sure I would have made these changes otherwise. I might have continued rattling around that big house alone, clinging to memories instead of creating new experiences. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. My daughter did me a similar favor, though I didn't see it that way at the time. Selling my condo without proper consultation was a betrayal, but it forced me to confront how I wanted to spend my remaining years. And how do you want to spend them? I asked. Her eyes twinkled with mischief. Scandalizing the neighbors at Lighthouse Point for starters. 2 old ladies with offshore accounts and no patience for nonsense? Will be legendary. The move-in process unfolded over the following week with remarkably few complications. The furniture deliveries arrived as scheduled, the internet and utilities were connected promptly, and even the smart home system Emily had recommended was installed with minimal frustration. By the time Emily came to visit the following Saturday, the condominium had transformed from an empty shell to a comfortable, personalized living space. The sectional sofa anchored the living room in a warm oatmeal fabric. The dining table gleamed by the windows, and the kitchen was fully equipped with the modern appliances Sophia and I had selected together. This is incredible, Emily exclaimed, spinning slowly to take in the space. It looks like something from a design magazine, but still feels cozy. Your grandmother has excellent taste, Sophia said from her position on the sofa. She vetoed all my more eccentric suggestions. Like the leopard print armchair, I reminded her with a smile. It would have added character, Sophia insisted. Emily laughed, delighted by our banter. You two are like a comedy duo. This is so much better than that echoing old house. She explored every corner of the condominium, exclaiming over the river views, the modern bathroom fixtures, and especially the smart home features she had advocated for. You can just say, lights off instead of getting up, and control the temperature from your phone. Very useful for arthritis days, Sophia acknowledged. Your granddaughter is quite practical under all that teenage exuberance, Peggy. As Emily continued her exploration, I served lunch on the new dining table, a simple meal of quiche and salad I'd prepared that morning in our gleaming kitchen. The normality of the moment, sharing food in my own home with people I cared about, felt both ordinary and precious after the institutional routine of Sunny Pines. Dad wants to come see the place, Emily mentioned casually as we ate. Mom too, I think, though she won't admit it. They're welcome anytime, I said, meaning it. Though Victoria might find our decor lacks a certain formality. Mom finds fault with everything, Emily said with teenage bluntness, but Dad seems different lately. More serious. He's been talking about financial planning and budgeting. Super boring, but different for him. I hid my smile, recalling the tentative conversation Andrew and I had begun about addressing his financial habits. We'd spoken twice by phone since the day at the Victorian, discussing practical strategies for tackling credit card debt and creating a sustainable budget. The conversations had been careful but productive, establishing a new adult relationship, based on mutual respect rather than dependency or obligation. After lunch, as the three of us enjoyed coffee and the chocolate cake Sophia had insisted we needed to properly christen the kitchen, I broached the subject I'd been waiting to discuss with Emily. I've been giving some thought to your college plans, I began. Specifically, Northeastern and their marine biology program. Emily's expression brightened. It's my dream school, but probably not happening with Dad's business issues. I've established a college fund for you, I said simply. Enough to cover 4 years at Northeastern or a similar institution, including living expenses. Her fork clattered against her plate. Are you serious? Like, completely serious? Entirely serious. Education was important to your grandfather and me. We would both want you to attend the program best suited to your goals. Emily's eyes filled with tears, catching me by surprise. My practical, science-minded granddaughter rarely displayed such emotion. I don't even know what to say. This changes everything. You still need to maintain your grades and complete strong applications, I cautioned. But yes, the financial barrier is removed. She launched herself from her chair to hug me fiercely. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you so much. Over Emily's shoulder, I caught Sophia's eye. She gave me a subtle thumbs up, her own eyes suspiciously bright. Later, after Emily had departed with promises to return the following weekend with Andrew, Sophia and I settled on our balcony overlooking the river. The summer evening was perfect, warm with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of water and the distant sounds of boats returning to harbor. You've given that girl an incredible gift, Sophia observed, sipping her evening tea. Not just money for college, but the example you've set these past months. What example is that? That it's never too late to stand up for yourself, that boundaries aren't selfish, that you can love someone and still say no to them. She smiled. Powerful lessons for a young woman to learn. Her words resonated deeply. In focusing on reclaiming my own autonomy, I hadn't fully considered the ripple effects my actions might have on Emily's developing sense of self. The thought that my journey might influence her future choices added an unexpected dimension of meaning to the difficult path I'd traveled. We sat in companionable silence. As the sky shifted from blue to lavender to deepening indigo, lights twinkled on along the riverfront, and through the open balcony door, I could hear the subtle electronic hum of our new home. The refrigerator, the climate control system, the technology Emily had insisted would make our lives easier. Are you happy, Peggy? Sophia asked suddenly. With how everything has unfolded? I considered the question seriously. The past months had brought profound changes, not all of them easy or pleasant. I had confronted painful truths about my relationship with Andrew, weathered Victoria's hostility, sold the home where I'd spent most of my adult life. I had learned that family ties could be both nurturing and constraining, that love without respect created dependency rather than connection. But I had also discovered unexpected friendship with Sophia, a new closeness with Emily, and the beginnings of a healthier relationship with Andrew. I had created a living space that reflected my current needs rather than past obligations. I had reclaimed not just financial control through the offshore accounts, but something more fundamental, the right to determine my own path. Yes, I said finally. I am happy, not because everything is perfect, but because I'm living authentically for perhaps the first time in decades. Sophia nodded as if this was exactly the answer she'd expected. That's all any of us can ask for, I think. Authenticity in whatever time we have left. As darkness settled completely over the river, we remained on the balcony, two women who had refused to disappear into the background of their families' lives, who had claimed the right to write their own final chapters. The offshore accounts that James and I had established as protection had ultimately provided something far more valuable than financial security. They had funded freedom, independence, and the courage to say, "This life is still mine to live, on my own terms." Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.